The mystery surrounding this ancient work has puzzled generations of scholars and observers, yet perhaps the answer has always been there, quietly waiting to be understood. Welcome to Museum.
In the scorching summer of the Revolution, when Paris breathed fear and hope at the same time, Jacques-Louis David painted a body that seemed to float between history and myth. The death of Marat is not only the image of a political assassination, it is a modern icon, a secular altar, an elegy to the written word turned into a weapon and into sacrifice. It is the exact moment when a man who wrote from a bathtub became martyr and propaganda, memory and warning, silence and thunder at the same time. Jean-Paul Marat died on the 13th day of July of the year 1793. He was killed by Charlotte Corday with a kitchen knife while he worked in his bath because of a skin disease that forced him to immerse himself in hot water to soothe the pain. David, a deputy of the same revolutionary movement, went to see him and promised his comrades a portrait that would be more than a portrait. He was not going to paint a dead man. He was going to paint the embodiment of a cause, the purity of an idea, the liturgy of a struggle that wanted to believe in itself until the end. The canvas is sober and devastating. An earthy background falls like a heavy curtain that drowns out all noise. The light descends like a cold blessing upon Marat's body, reclining in the bathtub that functions as a humble wooden sarcophagus. In his right hand he still holds the pen. In his left, near the edge, lies the letter with which Charlotte managed to enter. On the box that serves as a table, a clean and direct inscription to Marat David, Year 2. There is no blood beyond a minimal stain. There is no scream. There is no theatrical gesture. There is an impossible serenity that transforms the crime into a sacred image. David purified the scene down to the essence. He eliminated everything accessory. He eliminated the narrow room, the typical disorder of the aquatic desk, the diseased skin, the piles of papers. None of those details was worthy of the myth he imagined. He preferred emptiness so that each object would be an emblem. The pen as a symbol of the word that summons multitudes. The knife lying on the floor as a symbol of the violence that cuts the word. The letter as a mask of betrayal. The box as altar and tomb. The bathtub as a vessel of transit between the world and history. Marat's body deliberately recalls a Christ taken down from the cross. The arm that hangs, the inclination of the head, the peace after the pain. David rewrites Christian iconography with profane materials. There is no halo, but the light functions as a consecration. There is no cross, but the wooden box serves as an altar. There is no temple, but the emptiness of the background behaves like a sacred space reserved for contemplation. The message is clear, and at the same time dangerous. The revolution grants itself the right to sanctity. Marat was a fierce writer. From his newspaper he stoked popular trials with powerful rhetoric and a list of enemies that never seemed to end. David does not paint the incendiary. He paints the saint of the pen. That aesthetic operation is political. He turned an agitator into a martyr of reason. He turned an ordinary bathtub into a relic. He turned death into pedagogical beauty. The work is not neutral. It was born to move and persuade in a time of slogans, of fragile alliances, of daily executions. Charlotte Corday appears in the painting without appearing. She is entirely in the letter. In the page where she pleads for help for an imaginary widow, in the cold theatricality of deception, in the stab that replaces her face, David decides not to give her form. Denying her face is to strip her of protagonism. History concentrates on the victim. The image deposits guilt in a mute object and leaves Marat as the only human presence. Thus the painting shapes memory before memory settles. The palette is austere, ochres, veiled greens, ivory skin without stridency, a light that licks the edges with an almost Caravagesque delicacy. The workmanship is smooth. There is no loose brushstroke to distract. The surface is crystal so that the symbol goes first. On the box table, the piece of green cloth functions like a plane of calm that separates the body from the void. Everything is measured so that the eye travels from the resting face to the letter, from the letter to the pen, from the pen to the knife, and from the knife back to the hand that will write no more. It has been said that David worked with haste and unction. The convention demanded images. The revolution needed saints. The painter responded with a requiem that seems eternal painting. There are workshop versions and devotional copies, but the major work traveled with the swings of politics until it came to rest in Brussels, guarded as a historical relic and masterpiece. During the 19th century, it suffered darkenings of varnish that veiled part of its atmosphere. Later cleanings recovered the vibration of the light on the skin, the greenish nuances of the cloth, the subtle yellows of the paper, the precision of the graphite in the inscription. In those interventions, the fierce economy of the composition was confirmed. Nothing is superfluous. Nothing is lacking. There was a time when looking at this painting was an act of political faith. After the Thermidorian coup and the fall of Robespierre, the image became taboo. The revolutionary cult deflated, and the painting passed through zones of silence. David was imprisoned. The wind changed. The words changed, and the work had to wait for the next century to read it as art before as slogan. That change of interpretation was crucial. It allowed historians to see in it not only propaganda but a visual manifesto on the power of art to manufacture memory. In the middle of the 20th century, criticism read it as a perfect synthesis of emotional neoclassicism, order, clarity, morality of form, but also as the door that opens to the modernity of the message, a single body, a single gesture, a single object that explains the world. Over time, psychological readings appeared. Marat as the intellectual who sacrifices himself, the man whose skin disease forces him into a liquid cloister from which he transforms the city. The bathtub ceases to be furniture and becomes womb and coffin, origin and end. In that double sense lies part of the spell. The letter has become the most studied detail. The plea for help is a lie that opens the door. It is the mask of good, so that evil may enter. David underscores that lie with a clear handwriting that anyone can read. He turns falsehood into evidence. He wants no moral nuances. He wants the viewer to embrace a conclusion. Marat died for believing. Marat died for helping. The revolution has its saint. The abandoned knife is the second great sign. It is not embedded. It does not burn. It is cold. It has fulfilled its function, and now lies without rhetoric. That ice is deliberate. David does not want violence in the foreground. He wants its trace. He wants the after moment. He wants the echo where emotion concentrates, and the mind reconstructs the crime. The viewer, upon looking, becomes a late witness. He arrives when there is no longer any noise. He arrives when only thinking remains. The lighting of the painting has a moral direction. It descends from an imaginary height that recalls the great Italian masters, but it avoids theater. There are no clouds, no architecture, no draperies, only light that grants a rank. That economy creates the miracle. Marat's bath seems like a chapel. The pen seems like a relic. The paper seems like an apostolic letter. The entire revolution fits into an illuminated silence. During the 20th century, the work inspired critical rereadings and disquieting tributes. Some saw in it the birth of the modern political image. Others accused it of beautifying violence. There were those who compared it to a perfect poster before posters existed. Most views agreed on something essential. David constructed a narrative with two humble weapons: a knife that kills a man, a pen that founds a myth. The painting decides which of the two endures. There was no shortage of debates about the accuracy of the likeness. Testimonies of the time describe Marat with harsher features and skin battered by disease. David softened, purified, sublimated. That moral makeup is not a technical deceit. It is a decision of a visual dramaturge. The work does not intend to transcribe a corpse. It intends to design a presence. What survives is not Marat's face, but his symbolic figure. The painter, with lucid coldness, understood that beauty can be a machine of conviction. In the room where it is exhibited, the painting dominates without raising its voice. The viewer approaches as if his step could alter the dead man's breathing. The closeness reveals minute secrets, the delicate fleshiness of the earlobe, the greenish shadow that separates the cheek from the air, the moisture barely suggested on the edge of the plank, the dry texture of the paper that contrasts with the moisture of the bath. These are notes that support the larger music. Without fuss, without superfluous emphasis, David composed a score of silences. There are those who see in the box an allusion to the people's coffin, wood without nobility that nevertheless bears the solemn inscription. There are those who see in the green rag the folded flag of a homeland that still does not know how to name itself. There are those who see in the pen a civil scepter that defeats the saber. All those readings fit because the painting offers itself as a board of austere symbols. It does not guide, it does not sermonize, but neither does it abandon. It lays out the threads and allows each mind to tie its own knot. The original scandal was not only political, it was aesthetic. In a time that still loved great compositions with crowds, David delivered emptiness. In a culture accustomed to epic narrative, he proposed a poem of a single verse in a moment of verbal excess. He wrote a sentence with 3 words. That temperance makes him modern even today. The death of Marat is read in seconds and thought about for years. The most careful conservation interventions returned clarity to the inscription and delicacy to the flesh tones. When aged veils were removed, the light became breathable again. It is not a matter of brightness. It is a matter of visual oxygen. The painting recovered the sharpness that allows one to understand its moral architecture. An inclined light that baptizes, a triangle of lines that leads to the face, a non-existent horizon, so that nothing distracts. That invisible fabric is the true engineering of the painting. Interpretations changed with each century. For the Jacobin contemporaries, it was a sanctuary. For the Thermidorians, it was a danger. For late Romanticism, it was an example of heroic sincerity. For modern criticism, it is a machine of pure persuasion. In our days, it is viewed with reflective distance. Its formal greatness is understood, and its intention discussed. That debate is healthy. It means the work is still alive, and a living work is one that still forces us to think who we are when we look at a dead man who seems to sleep. There is no mystery deeper than that of a peaceful body after violence. David knew it. That is why he stabilized the scene to a degree of almost supernatural stillness. The viewer's breathing slows, time widens, the room empties of noise. In that climate, the painting fulfills its secret function. It teaches us that every community needs origin stories, and that art, in the hands of a master, can manufacture origin with wood, canvas, pigment, and a brief phrase. The death of Marat is the biography of a pen. It is the chronicle of a letter that opens a door. It is the liturgy of a light that turns a bathtub into an altar. It is the proof that extreme simplicity, when guided by a clear idea, can contain the entire weight of history. And it is, above all, the question that accompanies us as we leave the room. What do we do with the images that ask us to believe? What do we do with beauty when beauty serves a cause? What do we do with silence when silence looks at us? Perhaps the answer lies in the very matter of the painting. Ordinary wood, disciplined pigments, exact drawing, light of moral clarity, nothing grandiloquent, nothing spectacular, everything essential. David bet that what is essential remains. More than 2 centuries have passed, and the scene still stands like a cold flame. There is merit with the pen that no longer writes, and the letter that no longer deceives. There we are, with our gaze fixed on an instant that continues to explain the power of the image, to crown and to question, to elevate and to doubt, to remember and to judge. In the end, the work gives us a secret that is not spoken aloud. Art not only shows, art decides how we will remember. And in this painting, David decided that the memory of a man would fit into the dignity of a fallen arm, into the humble whiteness of a sheet, into the implacable truth of a light that does not forgive. That is the sober miracle of this canvas. To Marat, said David. Year 2, to memory we say today, for all the years to come. David did not live long enough to see his painting become one of the most studied icons of Western art. He died in exile in Brussels, far from the France he had helped to portray and to transform, but his legacy survived, multiplied in copies, in engravings, in history books, and in the consciousness of entire generations. The death of Marat was, and still is, one of the most reproduced images of the late 18th century, a synthesis of the power of art to immortalize an idea, to turn an instant into a symbol. The 19th century adopted it as an emblem of revolutionary purity. French Republicans used it as a moral standard, and Romantic artists admired it for its tragic balance. However, it was also reinterpreted by critics who saw in the painting an emotional manipulation. Some accused it of falsifying historical truth in the name of propaganda, of transforming a crime into an epic, and of hiding brutality behind beauty. But that tension between art and truth is precisely what gives it its power. David did not lie, he stylized. And in doing so, he created a new truth, more enduring than reality itself. With the passage of time, scholars began to compare this work with the religious martyrs of the Renaissance. Marat occupies the place of a secular saint. His letter is the secular version of the gospel, and the pen replaces the nail or the spear. The revolution, which had banned sacred images, ended up manufacturing an iconography of its own. David, with the precision of a visual architect, built that new temple. In his studio, Republican morality adopted the form of Christian devotion, and in that gesture lies one of the deepest ironies of modernity. Even revolutions need symbols in order to believe. The influence of the death of Marat extended beyond neoclassicism. In the 20th century, it inspired photographers, filmmakers, and contemporary artists who saw in it a reflection on political power and sacrifice. Pablo Picasso reinterpreted it during the Spanish Civil War in a series of drawings that compared Marat's body with the victims of modern conflicts. Later, artists like Edvard Munch or the members of the Fluxus group took up the image to speak of the political body, of pain as spectacle, and of purity corrupted by ideology. In all cases, David's bathtub remains a mirror where each era contemplates its own guilt. During the second half of the 20th century, feminist readings returned protagonism to Charlotte Corday. They asked why art had canonized the victim and erased the executioner. In that debate arose interpretations that see in the painting an involuntary reflection on the masculine fear of the woman who acts, on the repression of the feminine, in the construction of the hero. Corday does not appear, but her absence weighs as much as Marat's presence. In the penumbra of the background, some critics imagine her invisible shadow, a void that claims its place in history. On a technical level, recent analyses with infrared and reflectography have revealed minimal changes in the composition. David first drew a larger table and a more visible knife, but reduced them in order to maintain symbolic austerity. It was also confirmed that he used pigments of high purity, mixing lead white with small amounts of ochre and chrome green to achieve that almost marble-like tone of the skin. The precision of his drawing, executed with smooth and controlled brushstrokes, gives the surface a calm that borders on the inhuman. That calculated coldness is his greatest triumph. The restorers of the 21st century have worked with extreme care to maintain the original atmosphere. The cleaning of the varnish at the Royal Museum of Fine Arts of Belgium returned depth to the shadows and revived the glow of the paper on the box. Today, the painting shines with an almost funereal clarity. Before it, the viewer experiences a sensation of suspension. Time stops, breathing slows, and Marat's gaze, though empty, still seems to contain an unfinished thought. That sensation has made the painting be compared to a frame paused before the end. It is the pause between life and eternity. No other artist of the 18th century managed to freeze the instant with such economy and such intensity. David managed to make death seem not an end, but a beginning. He turned loss into presence. That is the alchemy of true art, to transform the irreparable into form. The taboo that the death of Marat still arouses does not come from its political content, but from its beauty. There is an ethical discomfort in contemplating something so beautiful that is born from murder. That contradiction is its heart. The painting forces us to accept that aesthetics can beautify violence, that emotion can numb critique, and that even horror can be sublime. That is why every generation returns to it with new questions. What moves us more, compassion or staging? The man or the myth? The body or the idea? Jacques-Louis David knew that every strong image must contain a wound. In Marat, the wound is not in the skin but in the spectator's soul. The knife lies on the floor, but the true blade is driven into the one who looks. That is the moral genius of the painting, to make us silent accomplices of the narrative we believe we are observing from the outside. What David shows us is our own capacity for faith. We believe what we see, even though we know it was constructed to convince us. That double reading, between devotion and suspicion, keeps the work alive more than 2 centuries later. In a world saturated with political images, the death of Marat preserves an impossible purity. A single figure, a single light, a single gesture. Nothing shouts, everything persuades. The painting demonstrates that the true strength of art is not in the amount of information, but in the concentration of meaning. In that measured silence, one can still hear the echo of a question that crosses the centuries. How much of the history we think we remember was first an image? Upon leaving the room where it is exhibited, the visitor usually looks back. It is an involuntary reflex, as if he expected Marat to open his eyes or the pen to move again. That small illusion is David's definitive victory. He managed to make death seem a transitory state, to make the body retain the breath of myth. His painting does not teach how to die, it teaches how to remain. Today, before the whiteness of that outstretched arm and the stillness of the letter that will never be answered, we understand that the death of Marat does not belong only to the French Revolution. It belongs to all the moments when a cause demands beauty in order to survive. On its surface are mixed sacrifice, faith, lies, compassion, and the desire to believe that the death of one can justify the dream of many. And that is perhaps the reason why, more than 200 years later, the painting continues to burn with an invisible flame. Marat sleeps, the pen waits, the letter lies, the light forgives, and the viewer, trapped in that triangle of faith and suspicion, understands that art, like history, never limits itself to showing what happened, but decides what will continue to happen in our memory. That is the true revolution that Jacques-Louis David left painted in silence, that of an image that does not die, because as long as someone looks at it, it will continue writing, with the ink of the gaze, its last manifesto.